Hello, this is Selson Korea with Before Semicolon, and today we're going to talk about selectors in JavaScript. This video is good for you that just arrive in JavaScript. It's just experimenting with stuff, and this is a good guide for you to understand selectors in JavaScript, or for you that got into JavaScript but found out that selecting is kind of a headache and you jump into jQuery, which make them selecting stuff very easy, or for you that's in the pro level but still struggling with selecting DOM items, or want to do it in a better way, or just curious at all. So just a quick intro. On the left I have a Chrome browser, and then on the right I have my IntelliJ IDE, and on top of here you can see the render page, and on the bottom here I have a console open. So looking real quick into my HTML, I have a section with ID of items, my H1 title, a UL list with ID of items container, and a bunch of li with class item, and one of them, the first one, has the ID of first. And finally I have a p tag. There you go, real quick. So giving an introduction to my roster, and in this video we're going to talk about how to select any elements, parents, children, the preview and the next element, the siblings of an element, how to remove an element, replace an element, clone an element, all with vanilla JavaScript. So this is the full roster. So we're gonna have a lot of fun, and I'm gonna also throw a lot of information here and there, extra information that helps you understand selector in a better way as possible. Okay, so let's start. First, I'm gonna select this guy right here, which has an ID, which is the first selector you probably learn in coming to JavaScript when working with DOM. So the first one is document get element by ID, and you just pass ID items container, I believe it with capital C. Oops, items container. I'm just gonna log it real quick. Items container, real quick. If I come on the browser here, refresh, I have the DOM element right here, which the next one brings me to the query selectors. And the first one, I'm gonna do a query selector here, which is actually my favorite. I'm gonna do first item, and the reason I'm doing first item is because I'm gonna select items, but because the query selector only returns the first match, I don't know, it's only gonna return the first one, which has an ID of first, as you can see right here. So like you can see, so inside here you pass it a CSS selector. So you that have fun working with CSS, this is a good one for you. You can throw your CSS selector right in there and work just as well. So if you're good at selecting elements in CSS, this is going to be no different. So if I want to select all the LIs that have class items, I'm going to do right here. So I'm going to call it items, and I'm going to just do selector all. This is going to return all the items. Oops. Items right here. So this is gonna return the full one. So just quickly, if you're familiar with arrays, you might think, oh, this is returns an array of items, but no, this is actually a list. It's called node list in HTML, JavaScript. So this is a node list. It's a list of node. It's not an array. This is why this information is very useful. You cannot run array functions through it. You know, there's one function that you can run in arrays, and you can run it with this one, which is for each. I'm going to talk a little bit more about it later, but just to have in mind, this is not an array. Okay, so just for the next demo, I'm just gonna do an improper attribute for this allies. This is not a valid attribute for li, just to have in mind. It's just for demo purposes. So this next one is gonna take me to the items by name. So it's a good selector right here. Document get elements by name. You're just gonna pass the name, which is the selected I set, name equals item. And if I do a log right here, items by name, you see it also returns a node list. it selects all the items with the attribute name and return it. A nice alternative is to use the query selector. This is the reason that I use this top three items, the element by ID and the query select and the query selector all. Because in the query selector all, because you just can do it with CSS, you can just select this, and if I refresh, it's still the same thing. So this is selected by name. This is also selecting all the items by name as well. Okay, so this is a good one. Even if I remove this part, it still give me the same thing. So this and this are actually right now the same thing. This is another reason I don't use the elements by name. I barely do it. So I'm just gonna bring it back to item, and the next one is by class. Items by class. Another document. Yeah, element by class name, and the name of the class is item. So there you go. So this returns a list again. Better say a collection. So again, this is not an array. Like you see here is HTML collection, and those the two before ones are node lists, and this one is an HTML collection. Again, this is not an array. So it looks like an array, but it's not an array. So you cannot run array functions through it again. So what's the difference between these two? So if I look into the proto, open the proto right here, you can see that the node list has more functions that I can run through it than the HTML collection. This is simple because an HTML collection is not iterable. You cannot iterate through an HTML collection. You probably could, but not using these functions. So because node list is iterable, you have these options of functions. You have entries, keys, values that are a way to control the iteration in the list, and they're very useful. I think tag name. So it's my tag name. So if I do items, for example, entries, I call entries on it. Is a function, and I call next, which is also a function, and I do value. And it's quite long, so you see I have the first one. So it still return this one returns me an array this time, and it returns an array with a match, and it returns the first the next iteration, which happens to be the first one. So this is a way to, you can do the same thing with keys, which returns 0 because the key is a 0. So if you want to understand why the key is 0, so right here we have 0, the key is 0 through it. So if I do keys, you're gonna return 0. If I do values, it's gonna return the item itself. So this is a good reason. This is a good information to know about these things. And you can also do for each, which we're gonna talk about later, so I'm not gonna bother on these things. It has the option of adding a for each to it, and you have a length, which is the same thing on both. So this is very good information to have in mind. These are not arrays, okay? So don't try to treat them like an array when you get the results. And the final one is selecting items by tag. Document, element by tag name, and what's that tag name? Is gonna be li. And there you go, by tag name, which also returns an HTML collection. So the bottom three I don't normally use. I don't remember the last time I used this option, the selectors, but I use this top three a lot. Selecting by ID. So there you go. I'm just gonna comment out here so we can go to the next one. For the next one, we're just gonna learn how to select parent nodes. So if I have items container here, I'm just gonna call this items container parent equals, I'm just gonna grab items container, and I'm just gonna call parent no parent. I'm gonna call parent node on this one. So parent node. I'm just gonna log this. Oops. Log items container parent, and this give me this parent, which is the section itself. You know, so the best way to you definitely don't need jQuery for this one. It's very short, like you see right here. So there you go. This is how to select by parent. So for the next one, how to select children. For this one, I'm gonna use items container a lot. So I'm gonna call var items container children on this one. I'm gonna do items container. Oops. Items container. And I simply gonna call children. And I'm gonna log items container children. Same thing. Parent node children. Parent node children. It returns an HTML collection. And there is parent node. There's also child nodes. Children nodes. And there you go. It returns a node list. But look at this. How different it is. So I have this text nodes, and I have the item, the text node, item, you know, it goes like that forever. And this one only returns the items. Text node stays in between elements, you know, and you really don't want to select them. So I don't like the child nodes unless you want to do something with the text node right here. They normally stay in between items, node elements. So I don't like to select them. So I just want to select the one with tags. So this is a good way to select child nodes as well. Another way is to use my my query selector, you know, items container. I'm gonna call query. I'm gonna do items container. I'm gonna do query selector all because I want all the children, and I'm just gonna do the star items container by query. I'm just gonna log this, and there you go. I got same thing as this one, but now I have a node list where I can get more stuff, and it looks the same thing as this HTML collection, which I can do less stuff. Pretty neat. So the next one is how to select the first one. I want to select just the first child, so I'm gonna call this items container first child, and the items container dot is as simple as first element child, and this gives me the first content, it's first element, and it's also the first child, which I'm just gonna do one right here so it can be different. But let's look what this returns. It gives me the text because the first child is actually the text node, which is has all these things. But if we come here, actually the first child of this element is actually the text node, but I don't want to know about the first child sometimes, so I want to know the first element node child. So the first element child option is much better than this one, unless you want to do something with that text node. Fix this one. So we have these two options. So if I find myself using this, I rarely use first child. So now let's do the last child. I'm just gonna duplicate this and bring it to the bottom. I'm gonna do last child, and very similar, last element child. Very simple, and fair enough, it gives me the last child. Very similar to this. Very similar to this, I have the last child option that gives me the last child node, which is also going to be the text node. Good. So the next one, you want to get any children, you know. So I'm just gonna copy this and children, and it's simple. I'm just gonna pass it what child I want to get. I want to get the third one. So voila, it gives me the third one, and the third one here is starting from 0, so it's 0 base one. So it's starting with 0, 1, 2, 3. So the number 3 here will bring me the item 3. But if I really want to get actually the third one, I can just -1 right here. It gives me the actually third, which is the middle element right there. There you go. And this is how you select children in JavaScript. For this next one, we're going to learn how to select the previews and the next element. So we have the items container. I'm going to use that. So items container, Prev, Sib. So it starts for preview sibling. So I'm going to do the items container, previews, element, sibling. So I'm just going to log this. This is very important when you put the element right there. So if we log this, I'm just going to comment out this one's. It's just not in the way. And there you go. Is the previous for the previous sibling is the title, which is this. And similarly, it has the previous sibling, which is another way. It gives me the text node. No, very different. This doesn't select the text node. When you do in jQuery, when you do this element and do Prev, it doesn't return the text node. It actually returns this, the item at, which is, it's basically what it's doing is this. It's just running this through it. So you really don't need that library to do just that. So I'm just gonna delete this part, and we're gonna do the next one, which you might guess, next element sibling. It's very easy. Which give me the P tag, which is right after it. So the next and the previous element sibling, and this is it. This is how you select the preview and the next element in JavaScript. So for the next one, we're gonna learn how to select an element siblings, and I have two ways that I normally do this. Depends on how I'm feeling right now. So because we have the first item right here, we're gonna use it. So I'm just gonna log the first item real quick. We're gonna use it. We have previously selected, and for this one, I'm just first gonna create an array. I'm gonna be first item siblings equals that quickly, and then we're gonna go about doing these two techniques. There's actually two techniques that I normally use. That doesn't mean there's no more than these two. So the first thing we're gonna do is from the items, first item, first we're gonna go to the parent node, and from the parent node we're gonna, like we did before, create a selector. We want all the child of this one. So from the first item, we're gonna select the parent node, and from there we're gonna select all the child of this parent. So remember, like I said before, this return a node list, not an array. So I cannot do array functions with it directly. So because this is a node list, like I showed you before, there's a for each option that I can run through this. And this takes a function which does what you need to do to the each item. So for each item you go into, I want to check if the current item is different than the first item, then first element siblings push this item. So for this each item I'm iterating through, check if it's not the first item and then push into this array. So if I log this array, if I log this first element siblings, it would actually give me all the siblings of this item. Very, very easy, you know, and easy to understand. And the next one, for the next one, is actually a hack, and I'm just gonna comment out this one so you don't know that, so we know that this is working. So I'm just gonna say first element sibling, and the first way to trick this, because this is not a return array, and we're gonna call an array object, and from there we're gonna call the prototype of this array object, and we're gonna call the filter function. The filter function is an option for any arrays out there. So any array, you can run this directly, because the node list is not an array. We're gonna use this hack. We're gonna call the array prototype. I'm gonna select the filter option right there. I'm gonna call it, and the call takes two parameters. It takes first the list, and I'm just gonna copy this, which is the same thing, and a function. Just to make this easy to read. So okay, it takes this the list, which is gonna replace the this inside the filter, which is a topic, very complex topic for another time. And I'm gonna do child right here. I'm gonna say return child that's different than first child, first item. And if I log this, I got the same result, same exactly result. You might find that the first option is actually much easier to understand, to read, and this one you might scratch your head a little bit depending on your level of JavaScript. But this is a cool hack you can do to make the filter think that this is an array. But what is a filter function? Is a very good utility function in JavaScript, and I love it a lot. And this simply goes through a list and apply the condition. This return a new list, a new array, according to the condition we put inside. This time I'll say return everything that's different from the first item. And on the first one, I'm just uncomment it out. I'll say if it's different than this item, put it in an array. So it's pretty much doing about the same thing. That's why we got the same exactly result, as you can see here. So this is how you select siblings in JavaScript without jQuery and everything. Very cool hack. For the next one, we're going to learn how to remove an element. And to remove an element, it's pretty much the same thing we just did for the selecting siblings. We're going to have to go through to the parent, or just do from the parents as well. So first one, I'm going to do from the parents, and I'm going to remove child. I'm going to call remove child. And what child I want to remove? I'm going to remove the first item. I'm just going to pass a node right there, and pay attention right here. So the first item is this item 0, as you can see in the browser right here. As soon as I run this, the item 0 is gone. So we have to do it from the parent. The remove child only works from a parent perspective. But let's say I wanna remove for example, like we did here, I want the last child and remove the third one, the middle one, from the last child. So I'm gonna from the last child, remember, we're gonna have to go to the parent node first to be able to do remove child. And I'm gonna do items container and children. So this is gonna give me the muted children. So as soon as I can run this, the item number 2 is gonna disappear, like you're gonna see right here. There you go. Now I have item 1, 3, and 4. So I just removed an element in JavaScript. Very easy. So for the next one, we're gonna know how to replace an element. Is a something I do a lot actually, and it's very simple. So the first thing I'm gonna replace is the last child. So I'm gonna do last child. I'll have to replace it, but first, and the way to replace is actually to do outer HTML. So let's first, I want you to understand what's an outer HTML. So I'm just gonna log this. And for our surprise, the outer HTML is actually the element itself. It's just a string. It returns a string, you know. So since that it's itself, I'm saying yourself should be equal to, I'm just gonna do a tag, href, oh, a link tag, which is not gonna take me anywhere. So I'll say I am a link. I'm gonna close the tag, and as soon as I run this, pay attention, this is the last item, item 4. If I refresh, now it is a link. We can do this with with things. If you want to replace something on the page, it's pretty cool. But to replace something, you probably want to clone it first, you know. So this takes us to the next one. So it's very simple. So I'm just gonna do elements, the previous sibling, items contain a previous sibling, which is the title, you know. So the previous sibling of this is the title. So I'm gonna say var new items contain sib. So it's gonna do items contain sib previous sib, which is the title, and it's as simple as doing clone node, and I want to pass it true. I'm going to explain why true. So now if I log this, I have that, which is going to give me the node, you know. It's a copy of the title, and it's a good way. And the true here, it just means you need to go deep, you know. If I don't do it this, it still doesn't go deep, because going deep means you have to grab the content as well. So this, I'm just cloning the tag itself, but because I said true, it's gonna clone anything that's inside of it. So the tags, any other element, everything, you know, everything. So I like to run this a lot. So I like to clone it and then replace a cloning and set into a new element, and then I replace the element, but I still have that one too, so I can switch back. So it's a good way. It's a nice technique right there. So there you go. This is a full overview on selectors, and I hope you enjoy this, and I enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.